Are you stressed out, overwhelmed, and feeling like your life is out of control? Well, you're not alone. These feelings are very common, and I'm here to tell you they don't have to control you. If you're willing to act on what I'm about to tell you, it could absolutely change your life. Hi, I'm Dr. Brown. I'm a kidney specialist, which means I take care of patients on dialysis and in need of kidney transplants. So I deal with stress and anxiety all day long. If you'd like more about my background and how I became interested in anxiety, you can watch the video link below. Basically, early on in my career, I realized that what illness does to the mind can be much more challenging than what it does to the body. And until stress and anxiety are controlled, a person can't be healthy. So after 15 years of taking care of patients with kidney disease, I'm excited to tell you that I finally learned what's at the root of stress and anxiety. And I have to share it with you because when you understand it, you'll be able to take charge of your anxiety. And I know this because I've seen it happen over and over again. So basically, anxiety comes down to one thing, an infestation of ants. That's right, ants. Automatic negative thoughts, ANTS. When you're having anxiety, you're being overrun with ants. Now, if you've ever dealt with ants before, you know that they're real pests, and getting rid of them can be a challenge unless you have the right trap. And that's what I'm going to teach you, how to build an effective ant trap. Before you can start building the trap, you need to understand more about what a negative thought is. So in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of automatic negative thoughts, or ANTs, and in the next video, I'll teach you how to build the trap. So let's get started. There are three things in particular that you need to know about ants. The first is you need to understand exactly what an ant is. So a negative thought is any thought that gives you a negative emotion, whether it's doubt, fear, anger, sadness. They often have words in them like can't, shouldn't, or never. The thing about a negative thought is it's not so much about the thought as it is about how it makes you feel. So let's take the statement, I have to go to work tomorrow. If you like going to work, that's not a negative thought. But if work causes you stress and anxiety, when you start to think, I have to go to work tomorrow, you start to feel stressed and anxious. And that's the first point. And a thought becomes an ant based on how you respond to it. When a thought makes you feel badly, it's a negative thought, or an ant. Now you may be saying to yourself, it can't be that simple. This isn't going to work. If you are, congratulations. You've just identified your first ant. And I understand where you're coming from. Stress and anxiety are big problems, and this might sound a little bit too simple. But that's because you don't fully understand ants and how they work yet. So hear me out. I've seen my method work. And it's okay to be skeptical, because that brings us to the second point, that not all ants are bad. There's a lot of talk these days about positive thinking, and that's all well and good, but people have negative thoughts because there are negative things in the world. There, I've said it. Everything is not positive. You are not making up the things that are making you stressed and anxious. And there's nothing wrong with having a negative response to a negative situation. When I tell someone that they might need to start dialysis in the near future, I don't expect them to turn to me and say, that's good news. That isn't good news. The thing about anxiety is it's not the first ant or even the second ant that causes the problem. Anxiety happens when there's an infestation of negative thoughts, when they become automatic and repeated, when you develop a trail of ants. So let me give you an example. Let's say you start running late for work, and that makes you feel stressed, and it should, because it's not good to be late for work. And you might think to yourself, I need to hurry up, which increases your stress, but it also gets you moving, because ants are sometimes good. But that might turn into, I'm going to be late for the meeting, so my presentation isn't going to go well, and I'm going to have to meet with the boss after, and that's going to put me late for picking the kids up from school, and I'm not going to start dinner on time, and then when it's going to be so late when we eat, they're never going to have time to do their homework. They're really not going to do well on that test. Really? Your day just started, and now you're projecting yourself all the way to the end of the day, and your kids are failing out of school. That is what we call a trail of ants. And that's where anxiety comes in. And the point is that it's not a single thought, but it's the automatic and repeated negative thoughts that lead to anxiety. It's not one ant, it's the trail of ants. And again, negative thinking is not necessarily a bad thing. People who have ants tend to be the problem solvers and the doers of this world. They're people with active minds, and we need people with this skill. When you see how things can go wrong, you can often figure out how to avoid problems, or you're prepared to deal with them before they even happen. The problem occurs when you start using this skill at the wrong time. When your mind gets a problem that it can't solve, or you get put into a situation that you can't fully control, then your mind starts to spin off on these ants. And that brings me to my third point, that ants are simply a habit. They're a habit that you were taught from the time you were small, and they tend to run in families because they're partially inherited and they're partially trained. And you might not be used to thinking about your thoughts as habits, but they can be. When you start to see the patterns of thought that I'm talking about, you'll understand. So let me describe to you 3 types of ants and see if you recognize any of them. So the first type of negative thought is called catastrophizing. Now, the name says it all. Catastrophizing is when you bring a situation and you bring it to the worst possible case. So you start out running 10 minutes late for work, and the next thing you know, you think that your kids are failing out. If that sounds familiar, you've been catastrophizing. The second type of negative thought is called all or none thinking. Now, in all or none thinking, you look at extremes. So either you're on time or you're so late that it's a disaster. And this causes stress because every decision and every event has this heightened level of importance, because it's either going to be a huge success or it's going to be a complete failure. And you don't allow for anything in between. When you have those types of thoughts, it's called all or none thinking. Now, the third type of negative thought is called what if thinking. So this question of what if looms over everything. What if I'm late? What if it goes wrong? Well, there are 2 things about what if thinking. The first is that it's never what if it goes well. It's always what if something goes wrong. And the second point is that a lot of times you don't even answer it. It's just this question, what if I'm late? Well, if you're late, the meeting's going to start without you, and that's probably all that's going to happen. So that's what we call what if thinking. So if you start to recognize these patterns of thought, you'll start to see that ants are just a habit. Now, they're an automatic habit, which makes it a challenge to change them, but it's not impossible. Recently, I read the statement that a habit is a habit until you observe it, and then it becomes a choice. Well, until now, you didn't understand that you had this habit, so you couldn't choose to think differently, but now you can. So join me in my next video where I'll teach you a practical way to control stress and anxiety by understanding how you take these ants and you build a trap for them. Because I believe that when you understand a problem, you can start to solve it. You can find your way to health. So understand and thrive.